All right, so this is really what you're paying. This is really what you're going to pay attention to, because this is really what you want to know is how do you make this thing work. So I'm going to demo the JDBC drivers, and I'm going to put it in a Windows. This is a Windows shell here. And next week we're actually going to see UDP, TCP, and RMI work as well. And I have these examples available for you on my website, so you can download it. In fact, I'll put it underneath the video. So I just started recording this, so we can capture these events. Before you get started, I know a lot of you probably, hopefully, have Java installed. You got to have the J2EE. Actually, for JDBC, you don't need Java installed. You can, you don't need the EE version installed. You can get away with the JDK. And the way you tell if you've got it installed, actually, and you have to actually have it in your path, and you have to have it so that anywhere you can type in a command. Java, well, that's going to be for the runtime, the JRE, but Java C. If you type in Java C and you get this error message that comes out here that tells you you didn't put in the command, this Java C is the compiler command line option essentially to compile the program. If you get this kind of output, it means you have it installed. If you get bad command or file name, go back to step number 1, go out to the YouTube website, look at the video to install Java EE. Get Java EE installed. After you got Java EE installed, figure out what version you got. And you do that by typing in Java space minus version. And you can tell from the bottom of my screen here that I have version 1.7.0 underscore 02. I'll build 02 probably from that. So what I'm looking at is I've got version 1.7. So it's nice to know, because in the next few minutes we're going to look at the JDBC drivers. And you're going to go, oh, what happened there? So, what version of the Java JDK do I have? So, you don't need to have 1.7. However, as of about a couple weeks ago, that was the most current. I downloaded fresh drivers and stuff. All right, so step number 1 is we are going to take a look, and as I mentioned before, I'm going to show you the URLs. You can write these down. You can also pause the video and take a look at it later and write it down, or you can write it down right now. But if you go to a Google prompt and you type in download Oracle, you'll get to this page. And we've got to have Oracle installed in order to run JDBC, obviously. Oracle is free. You don't have to use Oracle. If you're taking a database class that has MySQL or something on it, you may use that. So Oracle is not a requirement for this course. In fact, this is not a database class. But Oracle's nice because everybody uses Oracle. So I've left this up for a few minutes, so hopefully you've written it down, or the people at home have looked at the video and paused the video, write the URL down. Come back to the video. And last weekend I taught the weekend section of this course, and we experimented a little bit. And I had a couple of students in the class download the 11G and run it on Windows 7, and it's not so good.
It's not good?
Not good. Not good. So, 10G, much better, yes. Long story short, without rehashing all of the issues and the problems we had, and let me tell you, we had a lot, I highly recommend not bothering with it yet. 11G just came out a couple months ago. Actually, not a couple months ago. They just updated it to release 2 not so far ago.
It's asking for 11G.
Yeah, I would use 10G. 11G and 10G are almost identical. The features are the same. The database, actually most of the Oracle database, it's to upgrade to new operating systems, it's to improve bug fixes and stuff like that. New features are added to it, but not significant features. The basis of JDBC, OJDBC, it works the same in every version. I have a Windows XP machine here, kind of an old, actually this isn't a virtual machine on my MacBook. I've got 10G loaded, it's perfect. Much better. I tried 11G. It crashed actually, and it ran extremely slowly. It did not behave well. So if you click on here, you're going to have to enter in, a username and a password. You don't have to buy it; it's free. You do have to register. Use a junk mail email. Everyone's got one of those, right? An old Yahoo account you don't check very often. Spam mail email account for stuff just like this. So put in your name, your email address, and then you'll get access to download it. So there's nothing to subscribe to. You know, and you can use your real email if you want, but you're going to get some junk mail by Oracle. So after you've downloaded it, you're going to get this prompt here. Go through, double click on it, run through the install. When you run through the install, you're going to get this little icon that says Getting Started with Oracle. Don't delete it. A lot of people just start cleaning everything up. You know, just delete everything. You need this one because you need to unlock the HR account. And this is not so bad. You do not get this with 11G, and you don't get the web interface with 11G, which is kind of the bummer. They didn't make the desktop icon, and they took the startup menu options are a little bit different. If you install the 10G, after you run through the install, well, that's the other thing too. If you do the 11G and you have the Java EE 6 and you have Glassfish running, which is a server that we're going to use later in the course, you got to turn it off. Turn off the application server because it complains and it does not play well with the database server. You don't want two servers running simultaneously. So if you're using this, make sure by default you turn it off anyway, because otherwise it's going to eat up resources. And they use the same port, which is the issue. In fact, we discovered that I had a student who was downloading it, and I'm like, oh, you got to turn Glassfish off, you got to turn Apache off, you got to turn everything off because it's going to use 80, so yeah. It's going to use the default, yeah. And then every time you go to localhost, it's going to get, where do you want me to go? So, yeah. You'll also notice after you perform the install, and this is for the 10G, you're going to get these lovely menu items. This is what you want. You want to start and stop, and you want the run SQL command, and you want this one here. Go to database homepage. If you install 11G, you don't get this one. So that's why I say 10G. After you install Oracle, if you don't want your computer to run like a snail, because it will run like a snail, then there's one step you have to do, which isn't too bad. Services. Yeah, so control panel, system icon, or just go to run command, services.mcs. And you want to put the Oracle services on manual instead of automatic. So if you go into the services, and if I sort this by an alphabetical order, which I've got, and I go down to, there's two services in particular that are probably set on auto. You're not going to get the scheduler. It's going to be disabled. Leave it disabled. You don't want the scheduler anyway. You're not running on a server. You can't schedule events. It's not going to work. So the functionality in the XE version, which is the Express Edition, which is what XE stands for, isn't going to have that functionality. So by default, it's already disabled. The recovery service, keep it on manual. I believe it is on manual by default. The two that you're going to be primarily interested in is this one here, the main Oracle service and the listener. And you want to make sure that these are both, you'll have to change it. You double click on it. If you haven't done this before, you double click on it. You can stop the service if you want or start it. Switch it to manual so that it's on manual. That way your computer isn't going to know the difference whether or not Oracle is running or not. There's no overhead. You install Oracle and you leave those services on, it's like you got rid of half your RAM. I mean, it's going to eat up its background. It's running a server, a database server on your computer. This, when you do this manually, when you reboot your computer, it doesn't automatically start, which means you have to start it yourself. When you start it yourself, you just use the, you say, hey, I'm going to use Oracle today. If I use Oracle today, I go in here and I go, okay, I want to use Oracle. I'm going to start the database. Then you get this little icon, or excuse me, this little window that shows up. And in the window, it's going to start two services for you. Those are the two I pointed out. It's going to start the Oracle service, and next it's going to start the actually, it started the listener as I was talking. The listener is on the top, and the Oracle service is on the bottom. If you use the option to turn it off, and this might be a bug, but I'm not sure. If you stop the database, only one of them actually turns off. The listener stays on. So if you're doing some Oracle work, you're troubleshooting your program, and you decide, hey, you know what, I want to stop and I want to work on something else now, reboot your computer. That way, or come back into services and stop the listener, because the listener doesn't get turned off on its own. I don't know why. It doesn't really take up that much RAM though, so you can probably run with the listener, and I've never noticed it actually. I mean, yeah, I'd prefer not to have stuff running that doesn't need to be running, obviously, but I've never really noticed a performance problem at all. So hopefully we're good here. We started it, so we want to have successful on both of these two. Once we've started it, we just exit, and we know that the database is started and the database is running, which is nice. So here's the next part. So after we install Oracle, we've got that running, and we've adjusted our services, then we go back to the web, and actually I can shut the services window. If I refresh it, you can see that, I don't know how do you refresh. How do you refresh? You know how to refresh? I'll leave it alone. If I refreshed it, we can see the view. I can see that both of those two services are started, but you don't have to check it. It's pretty reliable. So now we have Oracle installed. So here's the trick. Now we got to get the JDBC driver. So I saved the URL for the JDBC driver, also from the Oracle site. There's a ton of JDBC drivers out there. You can install anything you want, really. There's third-party, vendor-specific. This would be considered vendor-specific. And this is really OJDBC. Well, if I can say that right, because it's also JDBC plus the object all in one. And I will zoom in on this URL here, or you can just simply go to a Google prompt and type in download JDBC. If you do that, Oracle JDBC, and then you'll get to this page. Nice to work with this one. So most people look at this and go, but I didn't install 11G, I need a 10G driver. Nuh-uh. The 10G works just fine with the 11G driver. In fact, it works better. You can go over and search and find the 10G drivers, but don't use them. It will hang 9 times out of 10. So everything I said about 11G, the database, buggy. The drivers, better. So go ahead and when you get to this website here, what you're looking for is this one right here. OJDBC 6. OJDBC 6. And OJDB6 is supposed to work with the 11G release 2, but it works with 10G. It works with that version that I just showed you a few minutes ago. And although it says that it only works with 1.5, or excuse me, works with 1.6, it works with 1.7. You're going to see it in a few minutes. Nothing has been updated. 1.7 just came out not too long ago. But it is backward compatible. 1.5 isn't going to work. And so the 6 is actually for 1.6. The 6 on the here is indicating that it's the 6. It's SDK 6, which is what I have installed on here. In fact, you can tell that without even doing a version check by looking at the words here. EE6, which is, so you want ODBC 6 to be compatible with it. And if you have that, and you download the right one, actually it's this one right here, not the underscore one, what you're going to end up getting then is a jar file. So this is just like the name sounds. You click on it. You might, if you've already followed through the registration and you just downloaded Oracle and you get back to the, like you left your browser window open, you won't have to go through the download again. Excuse me, you won't have to go through the registration again. Or you can use your same registration that you used for the Oracle. So if you've got your, and then the registration is an email address and a password that's associated with it. So you don't actually have to use a different one. You can use the same one again. So once you've got the driver downloaded, the installation of that is really, really easy. What you're going to do with it is just copy it and put it into a directory. So the file is a .jar file. And when you download it, and I've put these instructions in a text file, and I'll put the text file, I'll include this file along with the video that I'm recording, so you'll have these instructions. And the instructions are going to give you, actually I do have the URL. Oh, very good. I don't have the URL for the Oracle, but I have it for the driver, which is good. Or you can pause the video and write them down. Long story short, you're going to stick it, believe it or not, in the JRE, the runtime environment, because the driver actually doesn't get loaded until runtime. It doesn't actually get compiled, and it's a package. I mean, it's loaded in through a jar file through the runtime. So the mistake a lot of people make is that they put it in the bin directory, and they go, oh, the bin directory is in my path, you know, and And then you get driver JDBC connection errors because the driver won't load. It can't find the driver. If it can't find the driver, you get some weird error messages like that. And what I'm doing right now is opening up Explorer to show you the directory location. If you get strange errors, it's probably because you put it in the wrong place, or you know, the JRE can't find it. Because some people create class paths or they put the JDK Java directories, and let me show you what I'm talking about in a few minutes here. If I go to the C drive, and if I go down to Program Files, I named my directory Java, and in my directory Java I've got the JDK, and in the JDK directory I've got the bin directory, and we all know we have to put the bin directory in the path, you know, because otherwise when we type in Java C, we get an error message, right? And so a lot of people naturally would just stick the jar file in this directory. If you do that, you're going to have a problem. In fact, we tested it last weekend and we had a problem. So you actually have to go down to the JRE from the JDK in the correct JDK that you're using. If you have multiple versions of Java installed, you got to find the one that matches 1.6 or 1.7. If you put it in the earlier ones, not going to work. I just saved myself a lot of trouble and I removed all the previous versions. So I only have one version of Java installed. But if you're sloppy and you just keep reinstalling and keep updating, you're going to have multiple versions in there. Once you hit the JRE directory, hit on the lib, the library, and go into extensions, ext, which is the extensions, and lo and behold, there's my file. So you download the file and you put it in this directory, and you'll see there's a bunch of other jar files in this directory as well. This is the package support for the extensions on the library. The Java JDBC connector is an extension, which is why it goes into this directory. So copy it into the directory, and then now you're ready to test it. So what we're going to do now is test the driver. And I will also stick this, I will stick all of the files that I'm showing you right now as links underneath the video, so you can just press on the link so you can see it. So this is the kind of install kind of readme file. I'm going to put this one here is called test, JDBC test Oracle. And this is the one that's going to actually test our install. Not a bad idea to make sure that your install is actually working correctly. Otherwise, after you've written your fancy program, you realize, oh, it doesn't work. I'm getting a connection error or something of that nature. So what I've got now in here is I've got the basic 6 steps that I went through in the PowerPoint that I can kind of just roughly tell you, or all 6 steps are in here. The only thing different about this program than in the PowerPoint is that I didn't show you the imports. So we import the SQL connection, the driver manager, the result set, statement. I did this all manually. You could probably put it all in one import and not break it out in this level if you wanted to. But I did this for illustrative purposes so you can see that these are the components that we're using in this program. And so you should be able to use this as is if you are installing, or if you have installed Oracle on your computer and you're running this program from the same computer, you're going to be using localhost. You should be able to download it whether you're on XP or on Windows 7, or actually the same program works on the Mac partition just fine, but I'm doing this in Windows because you guys are familiar with Windows. But long story short, you don't have to make any changes at all to the source code. The driver should be set for you correctly if you're using Oracle and you've downloaded that driver I just told you about, and you're running this on the Windows machine and you've got Oracle starting. Localhost is 127.0.0.1 from networking class. It's your local server, which is going to port 8080 on your computer, which is where Oracle's sitting there waiting. That's what the listener is doing. It's waiting for connections. So in terms of the Oracle, that's the thin, which actually, I'm not quite sure why they put that in there. That's kind of new, actually, but it's for the XE version because we're going to the database, which is called XE, which is the Express Edition. And the port that we're going to go through is an arbitrary port 1521. You can change the port around if you want, but I'd just leave it unless you have something else running on that port or using that port for something. You pick the port, actually, that you're going to connect through, and it's the port that the client is going to use to connect, because what we're really running is a client-server program. This program is going to connect to the server, and it's going to do a query and send us back some information. So the database object here, the connection, just to kind of review, I loaded the driver. Here's our for name. This is that first step, load the driver, this statement. is fairly standard. Here it says Oracle driver. It could be MySQL driver. It could be any database that you're connecting to. This is the key here. And the other thing probably important to note is that you're going to want to give it the password and the name, the name and the password that's associated with the database that you're connecting as well. So you might actually have to change the URL string if you wanted to, to the right directory, the right location for this other server that you're using. And so you can fill in here. And let me show you where this HR is coming from. And let me step back a little bit. In order to run this example, you have to unlock the HR account because you've connected to you're going to connect to a database, but we really haven't created anything in the database. The database is pretty empty. So after you ran the Oracle 10G install, and it does not show up on the 11G, which is a bummer. But if you run the 10G, you get this desktop icon. It says Getting Started with Oracle. Not a bad homework assignment. Read the document. Getting started. I didn't give you a textbook for this course, so which is for a very good reason. The stuff's too new. I mean, a book's going to have old stuff. Read the documentation about Oracle. You might learn something about Oracle. The features in Oracle Express are the same as the features in Oracle. The only thing different is that you can't write a full-fledged application in the Express edition and deploy it out in the market. There's only one real true client-server connection as possible simultaneously. So it's not going to give you full capabilities, and in fact, it's limited, I think, to like 500 megabytes or gigabytes or something. I don't know, not gigabytes, 500. I don't know, maybe 1 gig. I don't know what the memory, but it's limited on how much data you can actually put into the database. So you can't like make a company application and deploy it with the free version. You actually have to buy licenses for it. It's not a free database. But anyway, long story short, you open up the Express edition and you go into it. And you can come down here and it says unlocking the sample user account. If you click on this, it'll take you to instructions for how to unlock the sample user account. And you want to do this because we're going to use the sample user account in the examples. Why reinvent the wheel when we have this sample? So we can go in, we can look at the tables and stuff. Once you follow the instructions here, the instructions are going to be using what's called a web interface. The instructions are going to have you go up here and go into the Oracle Database 10G and go into Go to Database Home page. And you'll be logging in as system. Another important note that's in the video download, video install of Oracle if you haven't watched it, or if you're planning on watching it, you don't even have to watch it. You can just follow this video and probably get through the entire install on your own. During the install, it'll ask you for a password. Pick an easy one. Pick one you're going to remember because there's no way of recovering it. You have to reinstall Oracle to fix the password problem. And what's the password? Well, the default user account is system. That's admin. So system is going to be your way into the system. And the password that you provided during the install is the password. So I've already unlocked the HR account, but you're going to go in, you're going to have to log in as system, provide the password that you provided during the install, follow the instructions, it's very easy, unlock the HR account, and then you're going to log out, and then you're going to log back in as HR. I've changed my password to HR, so it's easy. So I can just go HR. All the examples are going to go HR, name and password. So you can do that, and then you don't have to make any changes at all to any of the source code examples. So all your connections will work and your logins will always work. And I'm going to build all the tables for all of the examples in the HR account. Why make another account? Seriously. If you enter into the web interface to the HR account, what you're going to end up with are these nice little icons, much better than the DOS prompt. In the old days, before we had the web interface, and if you're using 11G, you have this. This is your interface to the database. It is, oops, it is running slow. It is going to pop up in a few minutes. Let's just try it again. Okay. There's a command line. It says go to command line, SQL command line on that menu, and it's a black screen that gives you a command line. So it not very user friendly. If I click, and now I'm in the HR account, I can tell because it says user HR on the top here. If I click on the object browser, I can see a list of tables and objects. Objects, indexes, all sorts of different things that are part of this particular database. And I am waiting a few minutes to make sure that it actually opens. I believe I have clicked, oh there, maybe I did not click on it. So It is connecting. Here we go. It does connect. I just did not click hard enough on it. So my example is using the jobs table. If I click on the jobs table, over in the right-hand side, and this is where you can probably do all of your database configuration. You don't even have to take a database course. You can click on this stuff and create the tables and put data in the tables and do everything through the web interface. Not as easy as I just made it sound, but almost that easy. So if I click on data, I can see the data in here, and I have the job ID title. It says add president, add vice president, add assistant, and I got FL, floor manager, finance manager, if I just read it, so the administrative vice president. Anyway, this is the data that I'm going to query in my JDBC example. So if I go back out to the JDBC example, I'm going to select star from jobs. I'm going to log in as the user's HR, password's HR. And my query that I'm going to run is going to say select star from jobs. That was that table I just showed you. That's also, it's built by default. You don't have to do anything. And then I'm going to execute query, which is my next step here. And I'm going to create the statement from the connection. So I got this connection of the statement object. And then I'm going to execute the query on the statement object. And that is going to be sent through the connection. And then I'm going to print Oracle query plus result set, which is the result set right here from that query. So my result set is going to come back and it's going to be added into this object called rs. rs.getStream. 1 is going to print out the first column in the result set. And those are those job titles I just read for you a few minutes ago. And then I'm going to close the connection, and then I put this all in a try so I have a catch on the bottom to catch any SQL errors that might exist. So I'm going to compile and run, and actually, this program that I'm using, by the way, in fact, I didn't even realize I hadn't introduced it. Are you guys familiar with this program? Some say, hey, I never heard of that program. What are you using? I'm using JGrasp, actually. Let me show you JGrasp. It's the best thing since sliced bread, actually. All right. So I like it a little bit better. I like it a little bit better than the Eclipse because it's lighter weight. And it doesn't do as much as Eclipse. You can't use it for Android development. But for little stuff like this, it's nice. So if you go to www, just real quick here, oops, here it is, JGrasp. Lightweight. It's like Notepad with a couple menu options, and the menu options allow you to. So if you go to JGrasp, you can download it. It works on a couple of different platforms. It's written in Java. It's originally, it's a nice teaching tool. I teach C++ in it. Java, It's nice because it makes JGrasp colorizes everything as well. I mean, Eclipse makes things in color as well, but JGrasp is really colorful. All right, so you see all the colors, the comments. It's nice, it's colorful. All right, it's beautiful. All right, so if I go in to build, compile, I can also select. This one doesn't have it. So now I started talking about Eclipse. And now I started thinking about Eclipse. And they have a compile and run. No, this one doesn't have it. Actually, no, that's the other one I like. Dev C++. Yeah, that's another one. That's another good one. These are all open source stuff. So. All right, so I compiled, and I'm going to kind of get rid of the code so we can see what's going on here on the bottom of the screen. And it says operation completed. It compiled it for me. So now I'm going to run it. And when I run it, it's going to go out, and it's going to... There it is, Oracle query, and now I got add press, VP, assistant, finance manager, and it brought me back the first column for me. And it was pretty quick. It just kind of ran, and it actually opened up the connection, ran the statement, executed the query, and came back. So it's not too bad. If that query doesn't give you that result, there's something wrong with your setup. Don't do anything else. Just go fix the setup. Don't bother with any other examples. This one's going to work. If it doesn't work, you can't continue. So, this one has to work. All right. If it doesn't, don't waste your time. If it does work, and once you have it working, then it's time, and you're not wasting your time at this point. At that point, after you have that working, you are going to proceed forward with project number 1 for this course. And project number 1 for this course is a JDBC assignment. And the JDBC assignment has some associated files with it. And let me go to bhacker.com real quick. let's see if I can get to bhacker.com. Internet browser seems to be running a bit slow. I think it's that internet. I think it's the IT web page. Did you notice the IT web page that comes up automatically? Right? Oh, okay, there's a problem with bhacker.com. No, www. Too many W's. Bhacker. If I can spell my own. Hacker.com. It's funny, somebody asked me earlier, what's your name? And I'm like, I almost said bhacker. Like, no, it's not bhacker. Barbara? All right, here's some links to all that fancy stuff I put out on YouTube. Actually, we have this is our third live class session, so we'll see this. We'll see this video under here eventually. Then we have the weekend stuff if you're interested. I went through all this stuff over the weekend, and you'll see a lot more problems now that I've worked out all the kinks. If you go to the projects, ooh, lovely. I may have just lost my internet connection. Projects should work. Oh, there we go, projects. I'm not quite. My internet connection is a bit challenged today. Project number 1 is a description. I'll go through that next week. I just want to kind of show you where these files are. Example number 1, example number 2, and example number 3 are the ones I'm going to show you right now. This is where you can get them. I'll also put them underneath the YouTube video. These are supposed to help you with the first project. I also give you the data for the first project. So let's take a look at these examples so you know what you're working with. Example number 1. And they're all demonstrating different parts of the database. Of the connectivity. All doing the 6 steps, which is kind of great because now you know how to do how to write every single JDB program that you could possibly write just by following those 6 steps I gave you. So you might notice this one doesn't have all the connection and stuff. Instead, it has java.sql.star. Mostly you're going to see it like that. You're not going to see it broken out. We also have to put IO and utility in here. So leave all this stuff the same. Your connection URL is going to be the same. This works for localhost. Everybody has localhost. It's the abbreviation. If you haven't taken a networking class, just don't worry about it. Just use it. If you're using the Oracle driver that you downloaded, you're going to leave that the same as well. And what you're going to do here is it basically is using a scanner class, which is picking up information from the keyboard. And it's kind of, this is part of util actually, part of IO. And the scanner object is nothing more than a way of getting input. So this is going to show you how to create a generic database where it says, enter your name, enter your password. You can probably say, enter the database name if you wanted to, and you can make a generic program to connect to any database, really. Of course, you have to know what queries you're going to run. So what do we got going on here? We're going to select star from stars. And stars, we don't have a stars table in HR. Stars is like movie stars, like actors and actresses and stuff like that. That doesn't exist in HR. I hardly see any HR celebrities out there. So. Celebrity HR people. They're stars. So I'm going to show you how to quickly create this stuff for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the metadata about stars, which we haven't done yet. All we did was query a table and we got a result. But we queried jobs and we saw the first table come back. So this particular example is going to show you the columns, the metadata. And it's using a command method called get metadata. Lo and behold, no surprises there. And then we're going to get the column count, number of columns perhaps. And then we're going to go through the columns and we're going to say type of column. And then we're going to print out the types of the columns. So we're going to get the data types that are associated in the columns and then the names of the columns, which is really cool. Because it's actually going to show you the power behind that result set that I was talking about earlier in terms of the functionality. And it's going to print out the ID, the name, the date of birth, the photo, URL, whatever happens to be existing in this particular stars table. So where is this infamous star table? Well, you don't have it, as I mentioned before, so you got to build it. So this is how we alter the HR account, and this is what you're going to do for your first assignment. In the text file that I will also include, and I believe this text file is in the README file. It's next to the assignment description as well, but I'll make sure. After you get done with the installation, which is the first part, we're going to scroll down to the second part of the assignment, where it's going to show example number 1, example number 2, and example number 3, which is JDBC 1, 2, and 3, which you're going to download. And otherwise, you got to unlock the HR account, yeah, yada yada, or build the movies database if you want, yada yada. Here is the SQL command, and I'm going to copy this. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm selecting copy, and I'm going to paste it in. I don't have to write a line of SQL. I can cut and paste and put this in here, and then I'm going to populate with a couple people. This is why I like the when it shows up. Maybe I have it out there already. I do. Very good. So I'm trying to get to that command line, and it's not. Was on my my computer these days. I need to think. It might need some more RAM or something. I'm not quite sure what the issue is, but anyway, I'm taxing it too much. If I go back to the home directory from HR, you know, I've gone out. I've logged in to HR. I've come up to this page. There's a big old window that says SQL on it. It's a lovely little window. If you click on the window, it's going to take you to an SQL interface. And I can say SQL commands here, and I can press this one here where I can actually put in commands. So I'm going to right mouse click and paste. And lo and behold, there's the query that I took out of that text file. And on the right hand side of the screen, you can't see it because the window's too big. I'm going to press run. It's going to tell me that the table is already created. It will. It says the name is already used by an existing object because I already created it. I made sure I actually, over the weekend, I created it actually for the other class. So it's already in there. So if not, it would say one table created. So, and now I can highlight and I can delete this. Now I can populate it with the data. I'm going to put 2 rows in the data, and the 2 rows are going to be 2 stars. And the stars I'm going to pick is Arnold and Eddie Murphy. So I like those 2 stars. So I'm going to cut him. I'm going to cut Arnold. I'm going to stick Arnold into the window. Cut and pasted Arnold. Although that was an easy cut and paste. He's kind of big. He's not an easy cut and pasteable guy. Eddie Murphy's a little smaller. So and lo and behold, this is 1 row inserted, which is kind of interesting. I think I dumped the table out, actually, so it was able. So I got 1 row. I got Arnold in there. And I'm going to do the same thing now for, actually, you know, I probably could have highlighted both of them. But Arnold was sort of big, so I want to make sure I had enough room in my cache for my pasting. So put little Eddie in here. Here we go. And I'll run Eddie. Oops, we got a violation. Because Eddie's already in there. So I got a violation because there's a key in here. This is a primary key, and I tried to put him in twice. So it's going to give me a unique constraint error on the bottom. It's violated because these guys are already in my database. So now I'm pretty much done with the database interface, so I can minimize that, and I can minimize my text file, and I can go back to the code if I can find it. Let's see. Make it a little easier for me to find it, and I'm just going to compile and run and see what we get. So if I compile, build, compile, on the bottom of the screen I'm going to move this up. This is why I like JGrasp, actually. It's nice. It's flexible. And I'm going to run it. And lo and behold, it's going to say, please enter the database username. And, well, that one's HR. Press return. Please enter the database password. Well, that one's HR. Okay. Now it's got the results for the query. And it says that there are 5 columns. If I look at the SQL query that I created that table with, you'll notice there are 5 columns. And column number 1 is a number. Column number 2 is a character. Column number 3 is a character. I've got a date field in there, too. And I got an ID field in there, and here's the 3 guys. Oh, I got 3 guys. I got Eddie Murphy in there twice. He was probably from the weekend. So he was in there already, actually. I tried to put him in again, so it didn't work. So I have the date of birth. I've got the photo ID, just test information that I put in there. So you can kind of see that this particular example, which is JDBC 1, shows you how to get the metadata and the columns and the number of columns and all the information about that result set. And it ran the method to get the metadata, which is the name of the method actually, on the result set object that came back. Comes in handy when you're trying to use the data. So you can say, you know, get the URL and then loop through and do something with the URLs or something. Or get the names and loop through the names or something. So I'm going to close this one and show you the second example. And the second example is going to show you yet another piece of the pie, piece of the puzzle, I should say. And this particular one is going to enable SQL processing by loading on the SQL packages, and after a while I'm gonna stop going through this stuff because you already know it's the same for each one of these examples. This particular one is gonna ask again for the name of the password using the scanner class, and it's gonna essentially create or update the database statement. So instead of running a query, it's gonna run an update. So we're not gonna get any feedback, but we're gonna see the results that change. So if I were fresh and I cut those two guys, Arnold and Eddie, and I put them in there, and I ran the first example and I saw the results, after I run this one and I run the first one again, those results are going to be different. Because this one's going to execute an update. So we have the execute update, and instead we're just going to print the return value that comes back, and this is what you're going to do for error checking. So this program is not really, just build it, compile and run it, compile it on the bottom here. And, okay, very good. And then I'm going to run it. When I run it, whoops, let me get it up here. You can hard set, for the assignment purposes, you can hard set the data if you want. What hard set I mean by, just program it in there like the first example I showed you. Or you can type in HR. The example actually, the homework assignment actually asks you to ask for the username and password, which is why I put it in this example. And you can see that the return ID is 1, which means it was successful. If it had a 0, that would mean that no row got updated. And because this return ID is telling me how many rows got updated. So if it would actually say 2, 3, 4. It's the return value of an execute update is going to tell me exactly how many rows were altered by the update. And I only changed 1 row. I deleted from stars where the ID is equal to 755011. So if I go back and run the first example, I'm going to see one of my Eddies missing. Because I put him in twice, actually, because I tested it over the weekend. So you guys can go back in and run the first example again, and you'll see the output's going to be a little bit different. So, in the third example, what do we got for you in the third example? We might have a combination. Let's see what we have in the third example. In the third example, we have same stuff as before, same database as before, same entering your username, entering your password as before. We're going to do what's called a prepare. So we're going to do a prepared statement. So we're going to update the stars with the first name. And here's the interesting part. We got a question mark in here. We didn't actually put in, I talked about this actually last week in the introduction when I gave you the information about JDBC in terms of its features and content. So if you missed this thing about prepared statements, it was in last week's lecture. And this week we're going to see the example of it. And here's the example right here, where the prepare SQL statement is a template, so it's readily executable. So what ends up happening is this statement gets cached on the database side through the driver. So we say update stars set first name equals with a question mark where ID is equal to a question mark. So now all we do after this is send it pairs. We say, ID number or first name, let's say first name is Eddie, ID number 755 or whatever, Arnold 922 or whatever his number is. And here's the statement right here actually, where we got new Eddie, new Arnold, new Eddie, the first names as an example. And we're going to update so the values of the first name and the second are the wildcard things that we're putting into the template. And they're actually ordered 1 and 2. So we have the first item and then we have the second item that we're going to put in. And so we keep the order, and there's no way of figuring out what order those parameters are supposed to go in. It's kind of like, parameters to function calls. We have to sort of remember what order we're supposed to put them in. But we fill it in, the first parameter and the second parameter. And we run this as many times as we want. We only run the statement once. Well, why do we do that? Because it's efficient. So when we prepared the statement, instead of a statement object, we use a prepared statement, which means we're going to run the statement more than once, which means we don't keep sending it back and forth. Every time we run the statement object, it gets sent in through the connection object, and it creates a new process, and it runs, and it stops, and then we run it again, and we run it again. We're constantly asking the database for stuff. It's traffic intense. If we know we're going to do a lot of updates, you don't want to send it like 5 different update with this, update with that, update with this. Instead, just send it one update with a couple of wildcards in there. Say, okay, now Arnold, Eddie, all these other people that we might have in the database. Makes it more efficient, makes it run faster, actually. So for each record in the table where the update to a new value is given, we're going to go where I is equal to 0, I is less than IDs.length, which is the number of IDs here. We have 2, 0 and 1. We have the first one is the first name, the second one is the ID. So the first names and the IDs that are going to be associated with them, and then we're going to execute. So we're setting this string and we're setting the integer. So we're setting the string of the first ID to the first name, new Arnold, new Eddie, and we're going to set the ID to the ID string here, which is 755011 and 755017. So when we run this, we can basically create an array, create a string, create anything we want, or actually ask the user. The user can just sit there and start typing stuff in. And then when you press return, it takes all those values and sends them off instead of in one statement. So instead of sending 20 different statements, you're sending one statement and you're sending a bunch of parameters that set the values for that statement. So that's what this particular example is demonstrating too. And if I run it, it doesn't really give us too much of an output because it's just doing an update again. Oops, I have to compile it first. Okay, operation complete. So if I run it now, please enter the database name, password. It's not going to do anything. It's done. But now if I go back and run the first example again, I can see where it's going to say new. It should say new something, new Arnold, new Eddie. And let's just take a quick look real quick to see. I may have messed up the data, but oh, that's the second example, isn't it? And that gave us. Is it the second example? No, I think that's the first one that showed us. Yeah, wrong one. I might have them actually in here. No, it's this first example. Hold on. That ran the query? Was it the first one? Yeah. I'm trying to remember. If I run this one again, it's already compiled. HR. New Eddie. So I got a new Eddie, and I got Arnold got removed from the second one. I updated Arnold. I changed him to Eddie. So now I got new Eddie where the ID was equal to 750. This Eddie actually had a different ID than the update was doing. So I had Eddie in there twice under two different numbers. But long story short, now you can see where it says new Eddie instead of Eddie, where it said last time. So, or maybe it said Eddie last time. I'm not sure. I've run these examples a couple of times, so the database might be a little bit messed up in terms of its content. So now you have witnessed JDBC working. So what you want to do is get JDBC working on your computer. And yeah, easier said than done. Actually, that's what one of my other students said the other day. It's like, it always works when you do it, but when I take it home and I do it, it doesn't work. Well, that's because. Because, that's why. That's life. That's what happens. All right, well, thank you guys for attending today. It is kind of a weird class, but I will put this up on YouTube, and make a link in the class. This will be our third lecture, I believe. Yeah, this is our third lecture. Next week, what do we got? We got UDP, TCP, and RMI. I will probably go over some of the assignments next week as well. We are just building them now in the LMS. They're not available yet. But very shortly, they're available on the bhacker.com website. You can get them from there. And you're brand new to IT completely. See me after and I'll orient you. I'll give you a proper orientation to the course. So, after I get done here. I'm not going anywhere. And so for those of you who are not new, who are returning, you probably want to start on the projects first, because the first project is on a JDBC, and then the first couple of assignments, actually assignment number 1, I believe, is on refreshing your Java skills. It's really easy. It's command line parameters, stuff like that, case switch or something, I don't know. It's actually super easy. The second one is a UDP TCP. Those I'm going to actually demonstrate to you and give you pieces of the source code for all of the assignments. So I just gave you a lot of stuff for project number 1. So if you wanted to, if you're a studious student, you can go home, install Java EE, or don't go home, just sit over there with your computer. We have internet access today. Install the EE platform, install Java install Oracle, install the JDBC driver, and you can start building this database together. If you might notice that the project data is huge. You don't have to use all this project data. And you can actually just put like maybe 5 lines, 5 entries. This is just to give you an example of how to populate it. You may also change the format of the table. In fact, you might notice the example was originally written for MySQL, and the date format may or may not necessarily work. The date formats are a bit different, especially with the newer version of Oracle. So long story short, you might have to make some additions, some changes, some modifications. Use the theme as in the description. Create the data as you wish, populate it as you wish, and just implement the features. And the point is not to make the assignment to the exact word of the assignment. It's to mimic or to create the theme and create the database. So next week I will go over, because sometime during this week I'm going to go through and actually make the data smaller to fix the date format for you. But if you work on getting this stuff installed, you work on going through the sample programs, that's a really good start in terms of your learning, and get familiar with the drivers and stuff like that. And then next week I'll demo the assignment itself, and then you can actually kind of start working on it at that point. Questions, comments, or concerns? No? All right, well, make sure you sign the roster if you are here today. You want to sign that roster. And I will see you next week. Thank you. I'm sorry?